It's January 6, 2026, and here's the headline that is just sending shockwaves through defense ministries everywhere. Ukraine's Unmanned Systems Forces inflict $20 billion losses on Russia. This isn't just a news story. This is a fundamental shift in how war is fought.
Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports.
I'm Alex. Join me with Arya in the latest deep dive for a sharp, no-nonsense breakdown of the latest in global defense news, military technology, and strategic developments. And today we're going to cover
The groundbreaking reality of Ukraine's drone revolution. We're going to detail exactly how their Unmanned Systems Forces, the USF, used homegrown tech and, frankly, sheer ingenuity to inflict financial damage in the tens of billions of dollars, all throughout 2025.
tens of billions. It's a number that's hard to even wrap your head around. Okay, so let's unpack this. Our mission today is to really get into this stunning shift in modern warfare. We're looking at the tactical wins, the deep strike strategy, and the human engineering behind these massive losses.
And we're drawing this from direct reports on Ukraine's intelligence ops and their tech advancements last year. And just to keep you hooked, we are definitely going to talk about an operation that sounds like it's straight out of a spy thriller. We're talking about booby-trapped FPV goggles.
Yes, goggles. Used to literally blind Russian drone operators. And we're also going to dissect the $50,000 strategic bomber, a weapon called the Goranich that's hitting factories hundreds of miles inside Russia. It's creating a strategic headache that Moscow just cannot solve.
That tension is the core of the story, isn't it? A $7 billion loss from one strike versus a $50,000 asset inflicting billions in damage.
Exactly. So let's start there with the financial impact, because the numbers are just overwhelming. Joint USF groups reported destroying or damaging over 75,000 Russian targets in 2025. 75,000. The operational tempo is just relentless.
It really is. It points to a complete saturation of the battlefield with these systems. But as important as that volume is, the tactical FPV hits on tanks and troops, the real strategic blow, the financial one, came from the deep strike operations.
High-value assets.
The highest value. And the single most expensive hit to Russia's military came from one operation. It was called Spiderweb on June 1st, 2025.
Operation Spiderweb. The name alone suggests something complex, something widespread. What did that actually look like on the day?
It was strategically brilliant. It was a complex UAS strike hitting 4 separate air bases across Russia, all at the same time. And the critical detail here is what they used. 117 small, commercially available drones.
So not expensive, purpose-built military hardware. These were basically off-the-shelf platforms that were adapted.
Exactly, adapted for military use. And the results were just devastating for Russia's long-term power projection. The strike damaged more than 40 Russian fixed-wing aircraft.
And we're not talking about disposable fighter jets here.
No, not at all. We're talking strategic bombers, the Tu-22M3, the massive Tu-95MS, and crucially, their A-50 early warning aircraft.
Okay, I want to pause on the A-50. For anyone listening who isn't familiar, why is losing an A-50 so much worse than losing, say, 10 fighter jets?
Because it's a massive force multiplier. The A-50 is Russia's eye in the sky. It coordinates air defenses. It tracks everything for hundreds of miles. It's a flying command and control hub. Losing one is like tearing a major circuit board out of their entire air operations network. It just blinds them.
So when you add up the cost of those specific assets, the big bombers, the A-50s, what was the confirmed damage from that one operation?
The estimated value of aircraft damaged or completely destroyed in Operation Spiderweb alone topped $7 billion. The Defense Intelligence Agency confirmed they lost at least 10 strategic bombers for good, plus severe damage to the rest.
And these aren't things you can just build more of quickly. A Tu-95 represents years of investment. It really puts the ground campaign into perspective. Russia has seized maybe 5,000 square kilometers since the start of 2024, which is less than 1% of Ukraine. And the human cost to do that. Russian casualties likely passed 1 million last year. About 250,000 killed, 750,000 wounded or captured.
The numbers are staggering. And the equipment loss ratio is really the key point here. It consistently favors Ukraine, somewhere between 5-to-1 and 2-to-1, depending on the system. It shows exactly how these low-cost, high-impact systems are inflicting asymmetrical pain that Moscow just can't absorb forever.
Which brings us to how Ukraine flips the script. How do you achieve these high-impact strategic strikes with a low-cost solution? This is why we get to the Goranich, named after the mythical Slavic dragon, Ukraine's homegrown strategic bomber. This is where the story gets really interesting for anyone following military tech.
What's truly fascinating is the audacity of the engineering. The Gornich is not some deep-pocket, black-budget project. It actually started as a modified French ultralight plane, a Sky Ranger. The DIY kit for one costs about $50,000.
$50,000 for something that can act as a strategic bomber deep inside enemy territory? That just completely undermines the entire cost structure of traditional military aviation.
It turns the whole economic model on its head. And this was a custom job led by a former businessman and pilot codenamed Gorinich. They took this recreational plane and turned it into a weapon. They added a robust autopilot, military-grade navigation to resist jamming, and extra fuel tanks.
And what's the payload? What is this thing dropping?
It's dropping old, but very effective, Soviet-era OFA B-100-120 aviation bombs. Each one has about a 92-pound high-explosive payload, so a substantial charge. But the real game changer is that it's reusable. It drops its bombs and flies back to base. It's not a one-way trip like a cruise missile. That makes it incredibly cost-effective.
So where are these low-cost bombers hitting to create this economic pressure?
HUR sources estimate the Gorinich operations alone have caused somewhere between $3 to $5 billion in damage. They're hitting factories, arsenals, oil and gas infrastructure. A perfect example was the attack on the Sverdlov plant on October 6th.
The Sverdlov plant, why was that so critical?
Because it's vital to Russia's entire military-industrial complex. Reports suggest it's the only facility in Russia producing large quantities of key explosives like RDX and HMX. RDX is in C4. But HMX is even more critical. It's used in nuclear weapon triggers and high-performance rocket propellants. Hitting their only source creates an immediate, severe bottleneck.
You're hitting their capacity to wage future war. But how does a slow, light aircraft get past Russia's air defenses? The Panzer, the S-300, these are supposed to shoot down everything.
Right, and this raises a really interesting question about defense envelopes. The Gornich can fly through signal suppression zones. It stays undetected. Why? Because of its low radar signature, slow speed, and most importantly, its low-altitude flight profile. Systems like the S-300 are built to spot fast, high-flying jets and missiles. A slow, low-flying composite plane can literally fly under the radar's floor. It's a perfect asymmetric solution.
And this ingenuity is expanding everywhere, not just in the air. I mean, look at the Black Sea. It's basically been secured for Ukrainian grain exports and denied to the Russian Navy.
Absolutely. The Magura Sea drone, operated by HUR's Group 13, is now a symbol of victory in the Black Sea. And in 2025, it got new modifications to increase its range and survivability. And they started expanding their targets. In late November, they didn't just hit warships, they hit two sanctioned oil tankers, the Kairos and the Virat, as they were heading to the major Russian oil terminal at Novorossiysk.
So now they're directly targeting the financial pipelines funding the war. But the level of ingenuity you mentioned, let's talk about the ophthalmology operation. This has to be the most audacious example of shadow warfare I've heard of.
It really showcases this relentless, unconventional mindset. In February 2025, there was a series of mysterious explosions, all involving the FPV goggles used by Russian drone units on the front line.
What was the method?
Simple, yet genius. Ukrainian intelligence managed to deliver pre-rigged FPV goggles to enemy units disguised as volunteer equipment. The devices were sent to explode the moment they were turned on.
They're weaponizing the enemy's own supply chain. It creates paranoia. It's a psychological blow as much as a physical one. This is what the media compared to that famous Mossad mission with the booby-trapped pagers, right?
Exactly. It's pure intelligence-driven tactics designed to degrade command and control. And we see that same tenacity on the ground. HUR Special Units Kraken, Artan, and Artan-X, which even includes former convicts fighting with incredible motivation. They've used FPV raids, bomber drops, and sabotage to just methodically destroy Russian equipment and halt their advances in key sectors like Kupiansk and Zaporizhia.
Which brings us to the human element. You can have the tech, but you need trained, effective people. What's the institutional response been like, building up that human capital?
It's been impressive and very systematic. In 2025 alone, Ukraine trained over 5,000 new operators for unmanned aerial systems. This isn't just a handful of pilots, it's an industrialized effort. They also train almost 100 cadet pilots for more complex planes. They're building a scalable, self-sufficient training ecosystem to get qualified people to the front fast.
And what about leadership? We hear a lot about HR Chief Kirilo Budanov. How does his style impact morale?
The Budanov factor is all about visible commitment. His personal principle is to be right there with his special forces where it's most difficult. That means he's on Black Sea patrols, he's visiting operatives in extremely dangerous areas like the Pokrovsk direction. His physical presence, personally handing out combat awards.
Yeah.
It's a massive morale booster. It shows support from the very top.
And his influence is huge, especially with projections that he could lead the presidential office one day. So with all these successes, what's the strategic outlook for 2026?
Well, despite the incredible innovation, the front remains tense. This is still a war of attrition on the ground. Military intelligence assesses that Donbass and Zaporizhia are still Russia's main priorities for this year. The technological edge helps, but the struggle continues.
Okay, so let's summarize the key takeaway for you, the listener. This deep dive has shown that technological ingenuity, like the $50,000 Goranich bomber, and just unbelievable tactics like the FPV goggles trap, are letting Ukraine compensate for a massive numerical disadvantage. They are inflicting strategic losses, $20 billion and counting, that are impossible for Russia to ignore.
Right. This is a conflict where fast, affordable innovation is maximizing the pain inflicted on the enemy. And it forces them into these expensive, ineffective defensive postures against systems that cost a tiny fraction of the targets they're destroying. That adaptability might just be Ukraine's most powerful strategic weapon.
It makes Lieutenant General Budanov's assessment for 2026 feel very relevant. For victory to come, it must become the responsibility of every person. And it leaves you with a final thought. How does this shift to decentralized, commercially sourced warfare, where a kit plane becomes a strategic bomber, embodies that individual responsibility for Ukraine's future? The fact that ingenuity, not just industrial might, is dictating the terms of this conflict is something to really mull over. You've been listening to Defense Report by Alex and Aria, where we analyze the latest in military strategy, global defense, and advanced weaponry.
Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. We'll catch you next time.